Beneath the cloak of darkness, a thundering locomotive races towards an abandoned station, a forsaken train known as the Iron Fortress. Within its steel confines, a band of warriors readies itself to confront a chilling menace. The Kabane, former humans transformed into unstoppable zombies. These twisted creatures bear glowing hearts encased in impervious ribcages. Possessing terrifying strength, a callous indifference to pain, and speedy regeneration, these abominations are near invincible. Armed with guns powered by steam, the brave defenders attempt to repel the unyielding monsters, their only success being to hurl the endless horde from their speeding train. Yet, should a Kabane's bite find its mark, a rapid and grotesque transformation ensues, a virus devouring the victim's humanity. In this nightmarish struggle for survival, loved ones are lost in the blink of an eye, and the endless paranoia of the Kabane threatens to extinguish what remains of their humanity. This brings us to our main protagonist, Ikoma, a steamsmith at Aragan station who is working on repairs of a locomotive when he spots the daughter of the ruling family Ayame Yamagawa. One of the other servants of the station orders Ikoma to help repair her steam gun, and they have a small exchange of words. However, their conversation is cut short as they are interrupted by the arrival of a battered train. It's none other than the Iron Fortress, arriving at the station just one day after enduring the relentless assault of the Kabane during the previous night. As per the rigid protocol, each passenger who disembarked had to undergo a thorough inspection, a precautionary measure against the dreaded bite marks that signified infection. Amongst the crowd, Ikoma noticed something peculiar. Two passengers, cloaked in an air of mystery, were ushered through the inspection line without so much as a glance from the station's guards. And then, as if on cue, a survivor suddenly runs out of the Iron Fortress, begging and pleading to the other soldiers that he's not infected. As his pleas seem to fall on deaf ears, the soldiers ready their rifles to shoot the man until Ikoma rushes to his aid. Ikoma forcefully reminds the warriors of the sacred protocols governing encounters with suspected Kabane. However, the lord of the station, Kensho Yamagawa, remains resolute, choosing to dismiss Ikoma's defense and instead ordering his detainment, ultimately leading to the execution of the frenzied survivor. That night, Kensho Yamagawa receives two guests, Mumei and her caretaker, Shimon. They are the two people who Ikoma noted were suspiciously allowed to pass without inspection. Shimon informs Kensho that they are headed to Kongukaku, where the shogun is located. Mumei, an innocent-looking young girl, gets bored and sneaks out of the house. She visits Ikoma, who remains frustrated over the injustice of his situation. Mumei takes an interest in him ever since she saw him defend the soldier earlier. But their conversation is cut short when echoes of distant screams pierce the air. Outside, another armoured train, the Fusang Fortress, is quickly approaching Aragani Station. However, it soon becomes clear that the train is already swarming with Kabane. As it crashes into the station walls, the hordes of undead Kabane disembark and begin their onslaught of violence within the town. The station's soldiers carry out their duties as warriors, standing steadfast against the relentless tide of encroaching enemies. However, the sheer magnitude of the threat soon proves overwhelming, pushing the defenders to the brink. The citizens, those fortunate enough to not get bitten, hastily gather their belongings and make their way to the only hope they have left, Iron Fortress. Using a pin, Ikoma quickly frees himself from his prison cell. Wasting no time, he makes his escape toward his hut until he sees a Kabane down an unsuspecting couple. Quick on his feet, Ikoma used his own blood as bait to lure the menacing creature into his dwelling. Inside, he began preparations for his ingenious invention, the piercing cannon, a prototype steam gun capable of using explosive force to pierce through even steel. This project had consumed 5 years of his life as he tirelessly researched ways to enhance their weapons. Their existing steam guns were of little effect against the formidable Kabane, and Ikoma was determined to change that. Additionally, Ikoma had gathered organs from destroyed Kabane, which were left strewn about the train during his tenure as a steamsmith. His aim was to gain an intricate understanding of the biology and physiology of these creatures. Armed with this knowledge, he hoped to create more potent and effective weapons against the Kabane. Now the moment of truth had arrived to test his prototype. The Kabane, drawn by the trail of blood, was closing in on him, and so Ikoma readies his weapon at the door. However, the Kabane unexpectedly attacks from the roof of his hut. Despite being ambushed from above, Ikoma is able to pull the trigger, releasing the bolt through the Kabane. The steel ribcage is pierced and the heart is destroyed with a thunderous bang. But triumph comes at a harrowing cost. The Kabane's bite had found its mark, infecting him. However, Ikoma has another daring theory to test. Ikoma knows that if he can prevent the virus from reaching his brain, he can stave off the horrific transformation into a Kabane. With grim resolve, he chooses a drastic method. He subjects himself to scorching steel, seeking to asphyxiate the infection before it can claim his mind. In the midst of chaos, Mumei races towards the Iron Fortress. She meets her attendant Shimon on the way, only to find he has been infected. He instructs her to press forward without him and tragically takes his own life to prevent his transformation. Undeterred by grief, she presses on only to encounter a Kabane in her way. Mumei removes the blue ribbon from her neck and unleashes her hidden prowess as she swiftly beheads the Kabane. With the immediate threat thwarted, Mumei dons her protective armor and presses on. Her quest leads her to a gathering of survivors, led by Ayame and a group of warriors, anxiously awaiting a signal from her father. The signal signifies the safety of a train ride to escape impending danger. However, an unexpected hurdle arises. A bottleneck forms among the anxious citizens, endangering them to the hordes of monsters. Mumei offers to clear the path, but first there must be someone who knows how to drive the train. Yukina, despite her status as a trainee, volunteers for the crucial role. With Yukina's newfound responsibility secured, Mumei wastes no time. With the grace and precision of a seasoned warrior, she leaps ahead and swiftly dispatches a Kabane, expertly beheading the abomination. Her fearless leadership and combat prowess prove invaluable as she lures a horde of Kabane away from the vulnerable citizens. The town is now engulfed in fires here and there, providing light onto the massacre that's currently happening. But they can also see Mumei taking on the Kabane as if she's been doing this forever. She moves fast and none of her movements are wasted. Eventually, they all reach the train. Some of the warriors are so cautious they demand everyone to remove their clothes to show that they have not been bitten. Among those citizens are Ikoma and his friend Takumi. Takumi has been worried about him and has run to his hut to check on him. To his relief, Ikoma is well, and the weapon he's helped build is proven effective against Kabane. But then he learns that Ikoma's been bitten. He doesn't know what to think about this, but for now, their priority is to ride the train. They get allowed to ride thanks to Mumei, who's gone into an empty chamber to take a nap. Outside, the Kabane are intent on breaching into the train. Ikoma prepares his gun and fires it at one zombie. He's elated to know his weapon is working. But all the people see, including Takumi, is an abomination standing in front of them. That's because they see Ikoma's chest glowing, a clear indication that he's been infected. Kurusu, Ayame's retainer, doesn't hesitate to use his steam gun and shoot Ikoma out of the train. At the driver's station, Ayame uses the master key to ignite the train's engines. Yukina proves to be competent enough to make the train move. But their troubles are far from over. A horde of Kabane is in front of them, including Ayame's father. Plus, the train track is still in an upward position. The track serves as a drawbridge for additional protection. The switch is malfunctioning and the manual lever is the only option. To everyone's surprise, Ikoma catches up to them and fends off the zombies from himself. Despite getting bitten multiple times, he still retains his humanity. He knows the train can't move unless the track is down. As he pushes the lever down, he looks at the train with resentment. His only consolation is that people will regret it when they realize they've been saved by someone they abandoned. The track is down and the train moves on. Ikoma doesn't see the lifeline that Takumi throws at him. Then, Mumei jumps out and ties it to him. When they're both inside, they get accosted by Kurusu and other warriors. The retainer demands Ikoma to end his life if he still has his humanity left in him. But Mumei steps in. She removes her armor, revealing a glowing heart that's not different from Ikoma's or the Kabane. She declares that both of them are called Kabaneri. Neither zombies nor humans, but something in between. Understandably, Kurusu and the others are not convinced. To put their minds at ease, Mumei assures them that she and Ikoma will stay in the train car isolated from the others. She also aims to train Ikoma, as she has decided he will be her new caretaker, and with that they leave them alone. Their daytime trip offers a reprieve for all the passengers. Train engineers get out to inspect the state of the vehicle, while the servants distribute food for the citizens. Kajika, a former steamsmith, gives 2 pieces to a pregnant lady, knowing she'll need it the most. Moments later, Suzuki, the head engineer, comes to Ayame to inform her about the state of the water tank. It's been drained due to damage from earlier, and they need to have an emergency stop at a nearby water tank reservoir. Although it's inadvisable to stop during the night, Ayame has no choice but to allow the train to stop. They use the time to offer prayers for the souls they lost at Aragan station. They will be stopped for the whole night, so a quick arrangement among the warriors has been made for guard shifts. The passengers alight the train, create a makeshift altar, and offer prayers for their deceased. This is followed by a communal dinner which gives them a few precious moments of peace. Inside their train car, Mumei calls it a day for Ikoma's training. She asks him why he's not offering a prayer. Ikoma says his whole family passed away years ago. He doesn't remember his parents that much, but he remembers his sister. It's been ingrained in his mind the image of his sister getting bitten, and the way he had to destroy her himself using a chest bomb. All he had left of her is a green stone which they picked up from a nearby river. Since then, Ikoma has vowed to protect the ones close to him to avoid repeating the same tragedy. Mumei listens and concludes that it's the same story everywhere. The weak die and only the strong survive. Their conversation is cut short when Ayame opens the door. She informs them that many of the passengers are still fearful of their presence and want to fight them. Mumei is all for it, while Ikoma does his best to stop her. Ayame stops the men from pointless fighting, knowing that some of them are inciting small fires of doubt and fanning them to become hysterical paranoia. Mumei gets disinterested and heads to the bonfire where most of the women are resting. Then, without warning, Ayame stabs Ikoma in the chest. She wants to show them that if Ikoma can't harm their leader, then he can't harm others. Although it's unintentional, Ikoma helps to prove her point by saying that he'll not run away anymore, that the Kabane are their main enemy, and he'll do everything to fight them. Slowly, the men walk away, not entirely satisfied with what they've witnessed, but trusting enough to know that Ayame won't let them down. With that, Ayame and Ikoma go back inside. At the campfire, the women and children are slowly opening up to Mumei. If they can't accept her as a human Kabane hybrid or Kabaneri, then it may be easier for them to see her as simply a young and cheerful girl. However, they cannot deny the truth that she's still half zombie. And one indisputable fact remains: she still retains a hunger for blood. The frightened women stand ready to confront her, but their attention wavers as a scream pierces the air. A Kabane lurks in their midst, and to Kajika's sheer horror, it turns out to be the pregnant woman from earlier. Mumei's instincts kick in, and she thrusts 2 short swords into the woman's chest. With no time to process this gruesome scene, the sentries spot a horde of Kabane rapidly approaching. Without delay, everyone rushes back to the safety of the train. Kurusu also saves Ayame from Ikoma, who was momentarily on the brink of losing his humanity due to his bloodlust. After a tense few moments, the train departs despite the unfinished repairs. A pervasive belief brews among those on board, holding Ikoma and Mumei responsible for drawing the attention of the undead hordes. The weight of this prejudice blinds them to the grim reality that these two are the sole protectors against the encroaching zombies. To compound the issue, there are dissidents among the men who voice their discontent whenever things don't go their way. Among these dissenters, Akuji stands out as one of the most outspoken, boldly demanding the master key from Ayame. Lacking confidence in her leadership abilities, Ayame reluctantly surrenders the key to Akuji. His first directive is to alter their course to pass through the mountains. This route is undeniably the quickest path to Kongukaku, but is also teeming with Kabane threats. Furthermore, he orders the disconnection of the train car, housing Ikoma and Mumei, a move that extends to include Takumi, Kajika and Sukari, who are all branded as traitors. The train passes through a tunnel which, unbeknownst to anyone inside, is full of zombies who are already looking for a way in. Just as the men are about to disconnect the train car, a formidable and imposing Kabane jumps in front of them and cuts them down. Witnessing this unexpected turn of events, Mumei identifies the assailant as a Wazator, a Kabane who once bore the mantle of a skilled warrior before succumbing to the curse. Remarkably, Wazatori retain their formidable combat prowess even in their transformed state, making them exceptionally challenging adversaries. And to their misfortune, the train's door is left open, granting the Wazatori and the others access to the interior, allowing the monsters to reach the vulnerable civilians. Amidst the chaos, the terrified passengers rush to the front of the train, seeking refuge, while the valiant warriors quickly assemble a makeshift barricade. Their defense proves effective for a time, with the warriors employing their steam guns to fend off the encroaching zombies. Even Ayame joins the fray, wielding her bow and arrow with surprising skill. Eventually, Kibito, second to Kurusu, persuades the latter to employ his sword in close combat, recognizing the advantage of this approach in defeating the Horde in an enclosed space. In the midst of this struggle, Ikoma and Mumei hatch a plan to traverse the train's roof, guided by Sukari as they navigate through numerous tunnels. When the coast is finally clear, they launch into an all-out battle. As morning's light bathes the bloodied roof of the iron fortress, Ikoma and Mumei, despite their valiant efforts, grow fatigued, their hunger gnawing at them. Inside the train, only the formidable Wazatori remains, but their best fighter, Kurusu, is already injured. Determined to do his duty, Ikoma comes closer and begs for a little blood. It's the only way for him to regain his strength and defeat the lone Kabane. Ayame climbs up and offers her blood, which Ikoma gratefully receives. His lifeless heart begins to pulse with renewed vigor. Kurusu prevents the Wazatori from going after Ayame's blood, then releases his grip on the Wazatorias when Ikoma jumps in. Ikoma seizes the opportunity, launching himself at the creature and managing to subdue it. Raising his piercing cannon and aiming it at the Wazatori's heart, Ikoma pulls the trigger for all to witness. In an instant, the Wazatori falls lifeless, vanquished by his new invention. After this incident, Ayame regains the master key to the train, and a few of them finally realize that Ikoma and Mumei are their best protectors against Kabanes. With Ayame in the lead, she and the others vow to provide blood for the two Kabaneri, and in return, Ikoma and Mumei will do their best to protect them. The Iron Fortress continues its journey to Kongokaku. Ikoma and Takumi utilize this time to share their weapon discoveries with the warriors, including a prototype blade that's made out of a Kabane's steel ribcage. Mumei joins the women's and children's quarters along with Kajika. Their journey brings them to Yashiro Station, a stop intended for resupply, but to their dismay, they find the place devastated by Kabane, sparing only a few survivors. The scene prompts Ayame to aid what remains of the town's inhabitants. Among the survivors, a man named Inoku approaches Mumei. Inoku turns out to be a former servant of Mumei's brother with the alias Ear, but notes that he's no longer affiliated with them. Inoku, in a gesture of courtesy, and a stark reminder of Mumei's role as her brother's claw, emphasizes the importance of fulfilling her duty by eliminating as many Kabane as possible. He underscores that her continued value to her brother hinges on her strength, and any perceived weakness could lead to her abandonment. This conversation unearths a wealth of traumatic memories for Mumei, highlighting the complex relationship she maintains with her brother, who leads a formidable group against the Kabane. Mumei's demeanor shifts, and she adopts an air of arrogance concerning her skills while becoming increasingly unnerved in her interactions with others. Despite this, she listens as Ikoma devises a plan to navigate the challenges presented at Yashiro Station. A fallen tower obstructs the tracks, rendering them impassable. To operate the crane needed to lift the tower, they must ignite its power from the boiler room. Unfortunately, according to the survivors, the boiler room has become the nest of the Kabanes that had originally attacked them. So, Ikoma suggests an alternative route to reach the room without disturbing the nest, thereby minimizing potential casualties. However, Mumei derides the plan, labeling the group as cowards for not confronting the situation head-on. Though her sudden condescension surprises the others, they decide to proceed with Ikoma's plan. Yet, later on, as Ikoma and his group follow the agreed-upon path, they discover Mumei sprinting alone directly toward the boiler room. Left with no choice, they follow her lead. Mumei kicks down the door and charges inside, eventually managing to eliminate all the Kabane within. Ikoma ignites the power, and Takumi and Sukari begin to lift the tower using the crane. However, a fresh wave of Kabane emerges from the shadows on the ground, heading toward them. Kibito orders a retreat, and Ikoma volunteers to operate the crane alone. He might have succeeded in lifting the mangled tower if not for Mumei's unexpected actions, which complicated an already dangerous situation. In a courageous but perilous stand, Mumei faces the relentless horde of Kabane alone, disregarding the pain in her chest and the fatigue from the earlier battle. However, her recklessness leads to a Wazatori catching her foot and hurling her into the underground. Ikoma sees this and abandons his post to jump after her. The Iron Fortress has no choice but to retreat. The elders advocate for continuing to lift the tower and leaving the two Kabaneri behind, but Ayame firmly opposes this, declaring that no one will be left behind. Fortunately, Sukari has an idea that may prove invaluable in their efforts. Meanwhile, Ikoma attempts to free Mumei from under the rubble. A section of the boiler room has erupted due to excessive pressure, resulting in them being trapped inside the tunnel. Mumei grapples with feelings of shame for complicating the situation and attempts to conceal this by projecting an air of pride. Ikoma, however, reprimands her sternly, describing her as weak and labeling her actions as foolish for attempting to confront the enemy alone. He acknowledges his own mistake in abandoning his post to rescue her, but emphasizes the need to grow beyond their weaknesses. With this, Ikoma proceeds to rig several boulders with explosives and detonates them, aiding Kibito and the others in locating and rescuing them from the underground. Scolding the two Kabaneri will have to wait as they confront an even more terrifying threat. An enormous humanoid shadow takes shape underground, an entity Mumei identifies as a fused colony. It comprises thousands of fused Kabanes and humans, all under the control of a central Kabane entity. The only way to vanquish this abomination is by eliminating the controlling Kabane at its core. Here, Sukari's plan becomes crucial. Working alongside Suzuki, they've devised a cannon akin to a larger version of Ikoma's weapon. This cannon is designed to target the fused colony's central blue heart, disrupting the protective Kabane surrounding it. Mumei is entrusted with the task of delivering the decisive blow, her way of atoning for the earlier mistake, with Ikoma and the others providing cover. As the fused colony gives chase, they prepare for the imminent battle. Takumi misses his first shot but remains resolute, determined to make amends on his second attempt. Yukina focuses her efforts on releasing the train's pressure limiter, propelling the vehicle at increased speed. Takumi takes another shot, this time finding its mark. Mumei leaps into action, thrusting her sword into the heart of the controlling Kabane. The fused colony erupts in a cataclysmic explosion, scattering the lifeless bodies of the Kabanes in all directions. Through their combined efforts, they successfully depart from Yashiro Station, having learned valuable lessons, tested their teamwork, and, most importantly, survived to confront the challenges of the days ahead. As our heroes continued their journey, a necessary stop for supplies was in order before they proceeded to Kongukaku, the shogun's fortress. The Iron Fortress arrives at Shitori Station for provisions, greeted by a rare day of fine weather. A fitting occasion, as that day is also the day of the Tanabata, also known as the Star Festival, eliciting excitement among the weary travelers, offering a brief respite in their arduous journey. Each of our main characters go off to complete their individual objectives. Ayame, accompanied by Kurusu and Kibito, sought an audience with the station's head to negotiate a deal. However, she could only secure a meeting with a minister who, fortunately, agreed to provide them with food and medicine in exchange for a number of guns. Meanwhile, Ikoma and Takumi made their way to a weapons dealer, placing orders for supplies to bolster their fighting capabilities. Mumei, accompanied by Kajika and the children, ventured to procure essential food for the journey. Suzuki took charge of procuring supplies essential for the train's maintenance, while Yukina and Sukari did their best to patch up some train components with the limited resources at hand. The remaining citizens of Akagani found solace in mundane activities, from doing laundry and airing out futons to indulging in proper baths. Despite the serenity of the day, an undercurrent of trouble loomed in the shadows. Lord Shitori engaged in a clandestine meeting with several individuals, including Inoku, a former servant of Mumei's brother. Their whispered conversations hinted at a sinister plot that would soon come to light. As evening descended, Ikoma joined Mumei for a quiet dinner, a moment of vulnerability. It was during this intimate encounter that Mumei unveiled her true name, Hozumi, and shared a poignant memory of celebrating the Tanabata with her late mother. Tragically, her mother had perished, leaving Hozumi at the mercy of the individual she now referred to as her brother. This enigmatic sibling had instilled in her a belief that the weak succumb, while the strong survive. Ikoma, captivated by her revelation, recalled her admission during the Yashiro Station incident. She had never been bitten by a Kabane. This revelation hinted at a dark chapter in Mumei's past, inexorably linked to her enigmatic brother. That night, everyone inscribed their wishes on slips of paper, hanging them upon a bamboo tree. Ikoma voiced his earnest desire to eradicate all Kabanes and reclaim rice paddies, a lofty aspiration that drew laughter from those in attendance. Ayame followed suit with her ambitious wish to reopen Aragani Station, and Takumi humorously declared his desire for wealth and 3 wives. The collective realization dawned that there was no harm in dreaming grandly, a beacon of hope amidst their grim circumstances. The night concluded with a modest fireworks display, symbolizing their aspirations ascending to the heavens. The following day, preparations were underway for the Iron Fortress to depart when a significant event unfolded. Another train, the Triumphant Fortress, arrived, and it was no ordinary locomotive. Operated by an autonomous group known as the Hunters, it was led by none other than Biba Amatori, the shogun's eldest son, whom Mumei regarded as her brother. Biba had garnered acclaim as a hero for eliminating Kabane in various regions and returning the lands to the survivors. Ikoma was eager to learn more about the man who had instilled Mumei with skewed values about strength and weakness. He had an opportunity to converse with Biba, who was intrigued by the existence of a male Kabaneri, implying that only women could undergo the transformation into half-zombies for reasons as yet undisclosed. Beyond that, Biba was interested in Ikoma due to their contrasting ideologies, finding Ikoma's optimism an amusing contrast to his own. However, their dialogue was abruptly interrupted by the blaring alarm signaling the approach of a Kabane horde led by a horse carrying 4 deceased humans. This attack had been orchestrated by Lord Shitori and his accomplices, including Inoku, in a bid to draw the hunters, specifically Biba, into action to defend the station and, in the chaos, launch an ambush. Yet, they underestimated Biba's prowess, soon demonstrating why his group was renowned as formidable Kabane slayers. The drawbridge of the station lowers, allowing the triumphant fortress to run a few meters ahead. Its side doors open, revealing stationary cannons used to blow up the Kabanes. Then, a squadron of riders on motorcycles burst forth, meeting the zombie threat halfway with precision and brutal calmness. It quickly becomes known that they use an advanced version of the piercing cannon that Ikoma and Takumi had invented. The knights of the Iron Fortress gazed in awe as the hunters fearlessly and efficiently decimated the Kabanes before them. Among the hunters, their eyes caught sight of Mumei on the ground, supported by another female hunter named Hirobi, who, like Mumei, was a Kabaneri. Together, they confronted an exceptionally large Kabane with deadly intent, demonstrating their formidable combat prowess. Amidst the spectacle, all eyes, including Ikoma's, were drawn to the climactic confrontation between Biba and Inoku. It appeared as though Inoku intended to eliminate Biba, causing the onlookers to speculate on the treacherous motive behind this act. In a shocking turn of events, Biba took swift action, stabbing the traitor. While many believed that Biba had acted in self-defense, only Ikoma discerned the unsettling, almost feral satisfaction that crossed Biba's face, raising disconcerting questions about the true nature of this mysterious leader. At one part of the station platform, Sahari, the hunter's strategist, apprehends the co-conspirators in Lord Biba's ambush. He leaves Lord Shitori alive so Biba can interrogate him himself later on. Following the incident, Biba extended an offer to Ayame, proposing to escort the Iron Fortress to Kongokaku since their destinations aligned. Ayame, unaware of the seeds of mistrust already being sown, accepted the offer in good faith. Biba, however, was orchestrating a scenario designed to erode Mumei's trust in Ayame. He set the stage to make it seem as though Ayame did not truly trust Mumei. Adding to this atmosphere of suspicion was Ikoma's growing skepticism toward Biba, stemming from his suspicions about the hero harboring Kabanes within the train, a notion that raised a major red flag in his mind. Ikoma openly accused Biba of concealing Kabanes within the train, and these allegations weighed heavily on his trust in the enigmatic leader. In response, Mumei confirmed the existence of Kabanes on the train, explaining that they were being utilized for experiments. It was through these experiments that she had gained extensive knowledge about the undead. To further complicate matters, she disclosed a profound secret. She had been injected with Kabane blood, a transformation that had turned her into a Kabaneri. Mumei staunchly defended her brother's actions, emphasizing his primary objective of eradicating all Kabanes and restoring peace to Kongokaku. However, Ikoma vehemently disagreed, attempting to reason with her. Unfortunately, his efforts were in vain, as Mumei chose to stand by her brother's side. Despite her exceptional combat skills, beneath the warrior facade lay a layer of naivete and unwavering trust that seemed to blind her to the complexities and potential dangers of her brother's actions. Soon, they arrive at Iwato Station, the final stop before reaching Kongukaku. This station boasted even stricter security measures than the others, prompting every passenger on the Iron Fortress to disembark for thorough inspection. However, the triumphant fortress, Biba's train, was denied entry. It was widely recognized among higher-ranking officials that Biba and his father had a far from amicable relationship. Ikoma gathered Ayame and the rest of the group, delivering the disheartening news that his efforts to sway Mumei to their side had failed. Additionally, he reported sensing hundreds of Kabanes within the front cars of Biba's train. A consensus emerged among them, solidifying the decision to distance themselves from Biba's influence. However, a pressing matter loomed. Ayame needed to meet with Lord Iwato, and she entrusted Ikoma with the task of rescuing Mumei from Biba's grip, while instructing the others to watch over the Akagani citizens. Ayame meets with Lord Iwato, but instead of Kurusu, she's accompanied by Yukina. The head of the station has declared that only women companions are allowed in his presence. Biba, who has also requested an audience with him, follows this by taking Horobi and Mumei with him. Little does everyone know, they have now fallen inside Biba's trap. Under the guise of needing to relieve herself, Mumei discreetly made her way towards the railway controls with the intention of lowering the drawbridge. In her mind, she believed she was acting in the name of fairness. It didn't seem right that her brother, who had risked his life to combat the Kabanes, was being barred from entry. Even as Ikoma and Takumi rushed to intercept her, she remained steadfast in her conviction that her actions were just. However, Mumei's convictions were shaken when the captain of the hunters, Uryu, leads a small contingent of warriors out on motorcycles. Trailing behind them was a horde of Kabanes, drawn by the trail of blood left in the wake of the vehicles. As Ikoma attempts to lower the drawbridge, Uryu manages to get close enough to sever one of the ropes holding it in place. Chaos erupts as the zombies descend upon the citizens near the station's entrance. At Iwato's mansion, they hear the alarms. They immediately think that Biba has betrayed them. But he acts fast, slashing all the retainers first before cutting Iwato's head. Horobi aims for Ayame, but Yukina takes the blade for her. Biba takes them hostage and brings them to his train. There, he takes the last step in his plans for the station. He injects black blood into Horobi. This makes her create metal-like protrusions all over her body. Then she becomes the heart of a man-made fused colony. This colony stumbles through the destroyed houses, collecting Kabanes and humans everywhere, until she destroys one of the walls of the station. The remaining survivors try to climb up the triumphant fortress, but Sahari makes sure no one except them makes it out alive. Meanwhile, the Akagani citizens are taken hostage and are forced back inside their fort. Kurusu manages to get out to save Ayame. He sees her, along with Sue, the hunter's chief scientist. They are deciding whether to give Horobi the antidote called the white blood. Kurusu attacks him, but unfortunately, they both fall from the train, along with the antidote. Horobi has returned to her regular height, but she's beyond saving now. She almost impales Biba, but the humanity in her prevails, allowing her lord to end her as a human. Then Biba turns to Mumei, who's seen everything her brother has done. He tells her that this is the freedom he aims for everyone, gesturing towards the fire-filled town swarming with the dead and the undead. Following the horrifying massacre, Biba took the Akagani citizens hostage within the Iron Fortress, leveraging their lives to force Ayame into using her connections within Kongukaku to ensure their passage remained undetected. Ayame's uncle served as one of the shogun's advisors, and Biba intended to exploit this familial tie to get close to his father, the shogun himself. Biba revealed a chilling tale from a decade prior, when, at the tender age of 12, his father appointed him as the commander of a formidable army comprising 400,000 soldiers, dispatching them to Kyushu to eradicate the Kabanes. Initially, they achieved some success in their mission. However, the supply lines were abruptly severed, leaving them stranded and encircled by the relentless undead. It became painfully apparent that his father had orchestrated this ill-fated expedition with the intent of eliminating Biba. This treacherous act solidified Biba's resolve to seek vengeance against his own father. It could be surmised that the heads of Shitori and Iwato stations were complicit in this nefarious plot, which was why Biba had targeted them as well. The intricate web of betrayal and revenge had far-reaching consequences, ensnaring both allies and adversaries alike. Ayame reluctantly agreed to Biba's terms, conceding to use her connections to help him pass through Kongoku, on the condition that the Akagani citizens would remain unharmed. Biba consented to her request, setting in motion a perilous alliance born of necessity. Subsequent to this tense negotiation, Biba summoned Mumei, intending to transform her into the next colony. However, to his astonishment, Mumei firmly refused. She had finally recognized the evil intentions of her brother's actions and no longer wished to be a part of his plans. Her newfound determination was driven by a desire to save her friends from Akagani. Unfortunately, her resistance was short-lived as she was overpowered and injected with a serum that rendered her obedient to Biba's will. Meanwhile, at the other end of the train, Ikoma found himself confined within a cage, earmarked for experimentation since he represented the uncharted territory of a male Kabaneri. Unwilling to submit to such a fate, Ikoma had secretly been plotting a rebellion against the hunters. He had covertly garnered support, including Sukari, who pretended to have switched sides, and together they amassed crucial intelligence about the train's layout. Their goal was to seize control of the engine room, where the heart of the triumphant fortress resided. When the pivotal moment arrived, Ikoma managed to escape his cage by skillfully picking the lock. In a daring move, he attacked the individual holding the keys to several train cars. While Kibito and the others bravely held the hunters at bay, Ikoma and Takumi made a desperate dash toward the front of the train, driven by their determination to challenge Biba's tyranny and rescue their comrades. As Ikoma and Takumi reached the engine room, they were met with a grim revelation. The key had been switched. Biba had anticipated their revolt and taken precautionary measures. In a desperate attempt to thwart their escape, Biba opened fire, and it was Takumi who valiantly placed himself in front of his friend, taking the bullet meant for Ikoma. Takumi had been a steadfast and loyal companion from the beginning, and he embraced his fate with honor, acknowledging his deep regret for not having sacrificed himself sooner. This tragic act shattered Ikoma's resolve, leaving him vulnerable to further aggression. Sahari, a key figure among the hunters, stepped forward and ruthlessly shot Ikoma's right arm. The riverstone that Ikoma had been safeguarding fell close to Takumi, who, with his last ounce of strength, reached for it. In a heart-wrenching climax, Biba summoned Mumei, now under his control, to deliver the final blow. She mercilessly impaled Ikoma straight through his chest, and he fell from the train, seemingly meeting his end. Mumei, upon seeing Takumi's lifeless body holding the precious stone, took it for herself. The advances made by the Akagani warriors were now rendered futile. With Takumi's sacrifice, Ikoma's apparent demise, Ayame being blackmailed, and Mumei under Biba's control, a dark cloud descended upon them. They remained among the living, yet the cruel reality of Biba's actions had extinguished any glimmer of hope. Adding to their despair, Biba had injected Mumei with the black blood, sealing her inevitable transformation into the heart of a colony. All they could do was await their uncertain future, trapped in the grim grip of their circumstances. At Kongoku, the shogun gathers his advisors and all his constituents. He has received the news of Iwato Station's downfall, and thus informs them about it. Okimasa Amatori relays that it's his son, Biba Amatori, and not the Kabanes who attacked the station. But they have nothing to fear, for Kongoku is impregnable. He prepares his men to face the incoming attack, but to his surprise, instead of the expected arrival of the triumphant fortress, the station receives the incoming Iron Fortress. And, according to the information from the train, Princess Ayame of the Yamogawa family has captured the insurgent Biba and wants to present him to the shogun. Makino, Ayame's uncle, welcomes her and her prisoner. Then he brings them to the shogun's court. Biba is in shackles, seemingly helpless to the onlookers, but this is part of his ploy to get close to his father. He tells his father that for the last time he wants him to take his life using the dagger he gave him 10 years ago when he was sent to Kyushu. Okimasa, full of pride and feeling justified to end his son's life on his terms, takes the dagger. However, he gets pricked by the handle, and this starts the chaos and his downfall. The handle is imbued with Kabane's blood, which immediately infects the shogun. Biba gets up and incites more chaos by saying through the speakers that the Kabanes are everywhere, they just don't know it. Everyone panics, especially when a guard shoots the shogun. Biba ends his father's life by stabbing him through the heart. Ayame is ushered by her uncle to get out of there fast. Outside the palace, the citizens start to fight one another, thinking that if a shogun is a Kabane, then it follows that anyone can be. The control room of the railway station is now infiltrated by Uryu. He lowers the drawbridge, allowing the triumphant fortress to enter and unleash all the Kabanes they have within. Soon, the once thriving Kongukaku is now a picture of fire and mayhem. As if it's not enough, Mumei finally starts her transformation into becoming a colony. While all this is happening, somewhere in an abandoned beach, Ikoma wakes up. His recent memories come back, especially Takumi's death and Mumei's betrayal. He wails as the grief is too strong. He notices someone coming. At first, he thinks it's a Kabane, but it turns out to be Kurusu. He's still alive after falling off the train, and he drags with him a chained Sue. Kurusu is disappointed that Ikoma has lost all hope and fight in him, but it's none of his business because his concern is to go to Kongukaku and make sure Lady Ayame is safe. After fixing a stolen motorbike, he goes to Ikoma. He sees his chest wounds and concludes something. As a warrior, he knows if a wound is fatal or not. From what he can see, if Mumei really wants Ikoma dead, then she should have aimed straight for his heart. And yet, Ikoma's heart is still intact, and he's still alive. Ikoma finally realizes that Mumei must have saved him from her brother. This means there's still a chance to defeat Biba. As long as he's still alive, he has all the chances in the world. With renewed strength, he asks Kurusu to take him. He has welded his cannon gun into his severed arm. Sue shares with them critical information. He knows that Mumei is about to become the heart of a colony, but there's a way to save her. He shows Ikoma the contents of the briefcase that had fallen with them previously. There are 2 vials inside. The one with the white blood will melt the steel ribcage around the heart. This will allow anyone to pull out the heart and prevent them from succumbing to the hive mentality. But for Ikoma to have a chance, he must be as strong, if not stronger, than a colony. He voluntarily injects himself with the second vial with the black blood, accelerating the virus within. Sue clarified that Ikoma's fate would not lead him to becoming the heart of a colony. Instead, he would harness his life force at an accelerated pace, granting him unimaginable strength. However, this newfound power came at a significant cost. It would shorten his lifespan considerably. Despite the grim prognosis, Ikoma remained resolute, willing to sacrifice his own life if it meant saving Mumei and exacting vengeance upon Biba. As they approached Kongukaku, the city was engulfed in flames, casting an ominous glow on the horizon. Mumei had fully transformed into a colony, but a fragment of her humanity persisted, protecting her mind and heart from the overpowering hive mentality that sought to consume her. The souls of Kabanes attached to her resembled red butterflies, hungry and poised to consume her essence. Ikoma and Kurusu raced along the train tracks, choosing the quickest but perilous route. Sahari, determined to thwart their progress, steered the train in their direction, aiming to crush them. In a moment of desperation, Ikoma unleashed a mighty beam of energy that sent the train hurtling into the air before it exploded, obliterating everyone on board. However, the explosion also resulted in the destruction of the train tracks, leaving Kurusu stranded amidst a horde of Kabanes on the other side. With steely resolve, Kurusu urged Ikoma to press on toward the palace, willing to face the impending danger. Biba observed these events, marveling at the determination and stubbornness of the Kabaneri. It was time for him to confront Ikoma once more. Taking precautions, Biba ingested an antidote in case of a Kabane bite and instructed Uryu to save their people. Ikoma reached the palace garden, where he witnessed Mumei's life hanging in the balance. However, the impending battle would prove far from easy, as Biba stood waiting. The confrontation felt like a clash between a foot soldier and a general, with Biba effortlessly stabbing Ikoma. Yet, Ikoma's intense hatred for Biba and his unwavering determination to save Mumei fueled his resolve. He unleashed his powers, hurling Biba away. Just as he prepared for the final strike, he heard a call from Mumei's consciousness. Seizing the opportunity, Biba cautiously approached Ikoma, attempting to strike him. However, Ikoma acted first, impaling Biba in the chest and blasting away his entire arm with his cannon gun. This revealed a startling revelation. Biba possessed a glowing heart, indicating that he too was a Kabaneri. After defeating Biba, Ikoma rushes to Mumei's side and administers the antidote, finally releasing her from the clutches of the colony. When she regains consciousness, she sees Ikoma lying unconscious a short distance away, while Biba menacingly advances toward him. Determined to halt her brother's madness, Mumei makes a resolute decision. With a pointed steel ribcage, she swiftly impaled Biba in the heart. As he gasped his final breaths, Mumei reminded him one last time that they would find a way to live despite their weaknesses and draw strength from each other. A faint smile crossed Biba's face in agreement as he met his demise. Meanwhile, at the Iron Fortress, the elders oversaw the rescue of survivors, and Ayame discussed their escape route with others. Uryu approached them and offered information about their passage in exchange for permission to ride the train. One of the Akagane citizens couldn't contain their anger and slapped him for the hardships the hunters had inflicted upon them. Ayame deemed it sufficient retribution, recognizing the need for cooperation at this critical juncture. Uryu shared information about the whereabouts of Ikoma, Kurusu, and Mumei. Through the train's speakers, Kajika called out to them, directing them to meet the train on platform 13. The trio faced a perilous journey through the swarming Kabanes in the station, with Mumei shooting a lever to reset the tracks. By riding a train cart, they managed to reach the waiting train. Remarkably, Ikoma still clung to life, with no traces of the black blood remaining in his body. The antidote he had used was for Mumei, and the only other one had been in Biba's possession. It appeared that Biba's final act was to give the antidote to Ikoma, perhaps as a testament to the ideals he had once held before being consumed by revenge and hatred. As the sun rose, the passengers aboard the train left the nightmares of their past behind and looked forward to the promise of a new life on their onward journey. The scars of the past would not define their future, and they ventured ahead with renewed hope and determination. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video.